Rushanara Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted to have secured this debate. I called for this debate to voice my concerns about the regulation of social landlords and how they manage their properties. First, I want to pay tribute to the hundreds of my constituents who have campaigned with me and their councillors to draw urgent attention to their plight. The focus of my contribution will be about how we can ensure social housing tenants have the proper protection they need and can live in security and safety. This applies in particular to repairs and maintenance services, which, if not done speedily and to a high standard, can be devastating and, in some cases, life-threatening. At a time when local authorities and housing associations have been facing significant funding pressures, it's vital the government and regulators pay particular attention to the experience of social housing tenants. Housing associations are a critical part of the solution to Britain's housing crisis. They provide affordable, quality rented and shared ownership accommodation, and the best ones are anchored in their communities. Many provide specialist housing services, for example, for people with disabilities. Some housing associations have historical roots in the 19th century and the mutual and cooperative traditions. Tower Hamlets has many excellent community-based housing associations who have worked well in partnership with the Council to look after residents and to be genuinely responsive to the needs of local people. But in recent years, I have become increasingly concerned that these progressive aims are being subverted and the not-for-profit ethos of housing associations is being undermined in some cases. Old Ford Housing, which was established in 1998, was as the successor body to Tower Hamlets Housing Trust, was widely regarded as one of the best housing associations in East London. It was originally a subsidiary of Circle 33 Housing Trust for financing purposes, but was accountable to its own board of tenants, leaseholders and independent members. In 2005, it merged with Anglia Housing to form Circle Anglia Limited, and other associations joined to form Circle Housing Group. Since the merger, the quality of maintenance has got progressively worse. Circle Housing has systematically failed local people. Local councillors and I have had to deal with hundreds of complaints from residents, as have other MPs with housing managed by Circle Housing. Last winter, it failed to manage its heating repairs properly, meaning many tenants have had no heating or hot water for days. Many other examples have been brought to my attention of missed appointments, repairs left undone, poor quality work conducted by contractors and a failure to communicate with residents. Tower Hamlets Council has taken the rare step of dropping Circle Housing altogether as a preferred partner for housing development in the borough. Mr. Speaker, I give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
Really for giving way and for bringing this very important issue to the House for consideration. Would the Honourable Member agree that social housing regulations and in particular the right to the repair of these homes must be further protected, because some of those people go and do the repairs themselves and then when they go back to get the money from the landlords, they find that they can't get the money, so they find themselves in a precarious situation. Does the Honourable Lady feel it's time for the Minister perhaps to respond and address this particular issue?
More, and in particular, I will ask the Minister to address this point, because it's unacceptable that housing associations that are in receipt of public money are leaving some tenants to have to fend for themselves. And I hope the Minister will address this question and how to strengthen the regulatory framework. Mr. Speaker, going back to the issue affecting residents in my constituency, local ward councillors Rachel Blake, Mark Francis and Joshua Peck have been working tirelessly to support the hundreds of residents who have been treated disgracefully by Circle Housing. Some of the cases are heartbreaking. Residents carrying umbrellas indoors because of leaking ceilings, a heavy heater falling off a wall near small children playing on the floor, lifts breaking down on a weekly basis, 30 flats left without lights for weeks. No one should have to live like this. One of my constituents called the Circle Housing Office 40 times over a 3-month period to fix leaks that left them using an umbrella when using the toilet. Another of my constituents, who was 8 months pregnant, slipped on water leaking from her toilet that she reported on 88 occasions. Another couple had a boiler that repeatedly broke down for nearly 6 months. And a disabled resident was left without heating for the best part of 2 months. Another family had to sit with bowls on their laps and towels on their heads due to the unrepaired leaks from above. In another case, repair workers failed to attend on 4 pre-agreed appointments organised since May this year to fix damaged walls and ceilings. In other cases, leaks from bathrooms that have damaged ceilings below have been left unrepaired for years. And another family's unresolved piping problems have left them filling the bath with hot water from the kettle. They have been asking for help for months. An elderly pensioner in her 80s went without heating and water for 17 days. And another elderly resident had to live with no hot water or heating for 8 weeks. When he informed me about the situation, I asked the Chief Executive of Circle Housing if he could tolerate being treated like this and live like this, and threatened to inform the media about their appalling treatment of my constituent before they finally fixed his boiler. Mr. Speaker, it cannot be right that we have to go to such lengths to make them do their jobs properly, which are publicly funded. It demonstrates incompetence and a derogation of duty by Circle Housing. The poor quality management of Circle Housing was recognised in 2015 when the Homes and Communities Agency found evidence of serious detriment to the tenants and downgraded Circle Housing from G1 to G3, which means there are issues of serious regulatory concerns. Circle's response to such a damning ruling was to close down its subsidiaries, including Old Ford Housing Association, and centralising services, moving most of its staff to a new call centre in Kent. This has made matters worse. In the spring, Tower Hamlets councillors reported further failings to the social housing regulator. The regulator's role is to investigate whether there has been a breach of home standards, which amounts to serious detriment to tenants. I could not imagine a more cut-and-dried set of examples of serious detriment than leaving dozens and possibly hundreds of tenants without heating and hot water for extended periods. It seems to me that the provision of heating and hot water is one of the most fundamental of landlord functions. In response to that complaint, the HCA simply said it was satisfied that the progress Circle was making in improving its services of the progress. And earlier this summer, the HCA announced that Circle's governance rating had increased again to G2. My constituents have now had enough. Earlier this year, I received a petition from nearly 1,000 of the local residents. It called on the Mayor of Tower Hamlets, John Biggs, to report the continuing service failures to the social housing regulator and initiate legal action against Circle Housing for its failure to honour the promises it made to tenants some years ago, back in 2005. And it called on me to raise their concerns with the Housing Minister, which I did in writing earlier this summer to his predecessor and then wrote to him again in August. And I've not yet received a response. So I hope the Minister will make sure that he addresses these really urgent matters today in this debate. Mr. Speaker, given this context of the appalling record of the merger and growth of Circle Housing, it is not surprising that the recent proposal for Circle Housing to merge with Affinity Sutton has raised further alarm bells among residents. If this merger goes ahead, it will create one of the largest housing associations in Europe. Nearly 500,000 people across London, from Bromley to Brent, from Chelsea to Chingford, will become tenants of this new social landlord. It will own and run over 127,000 properties. Residents are also rightly concerned that the merger between the two and the centralisation of services, including repairs and maintenances, will see services deteriorate even further. They have what we've seen is a complete failure to be locally accountable, and in fact, the locally accountable board membership has been cast aside. They have completely failed to honour the promise that they made in the past when the transfer happened to Old Ford, that this would be maintained and there would be proper accountability. This merger with Affinity Sutton will make matters worse, and my constituents don't want any part of it, nor do residents from other London boroughs who have had similar experiences. Housing associations receive billions of public subsidy from the taxpayer, and between 2010 and 2016, Circle Housing alone received over £250 million of government funding. They must be held to account properly if we are to prevent others suffering the way many of my constituents have over the last few years in the hands of Circle Housing. So can the Minister provide an assurance that there will be more robust systems to process complaints, adjudicate in disputes and provide redress quickly when things go wrong? That he will ensure the HCA urgently investigates why Circle's management board retained a failing contractor, Kia Gas, to provide its gas safety and maintenance, and whether this decision, which left many tenants without heating and hot water for weeks, amounts to serious detriment. With the HCA review due to complete soon, will the Minister commit to empowering the HCA to investigate examples of neglect and repairs responsibilities? Can the Minister think again about HCA losing the power to give consent to housing association mergers as set out in the Housing and Planning Act of 2016? I have no doubt that housing associations and their representative bodies dislike the old regime, some of them do, from the Housing and Regeneration Act of 2008 and its predecessor legislation. But this case shows that some housing associations do not always make decisions in the best interests of their tenants. The government should be empowering regulators, not making them even more toothless to act, thereby making them inept at standing up for the very people they should be serving. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I do not believe for a moment that Circle is alone in providing a shoddy service, nor that this is the only proposed merger in the UK that is problematic. Instead, there may well be a trend towards bigger, more remote, less accountable housing associations with multi-million-pound turnovers and substantial assets and reserves behaving like companies not serving their communities. This is the antithesis of the founding principles behind housing associations and the opposite of what is needed now to fix the housing crisis. I commend the work of the many housing associations in my constituency and up and down the country, and it's right and proper that we hold to account those that are letting them down, like in this case Circle Housing, so that the reputation of good, hard-working housing associations that are responsive to their local communities is not damaged by the actions of the few like Circle Housing.
Gavin Barwell to reply to the debate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And can I start by congratulating the Honourable Lady, the member for Bethnal Green and Bow, for securing this debate on local authorities and the regulation of social housing, and for raising the wholly unacceptable conditions that some of her constituents have been experiencing, tenants of the particular housing associations that she referred to. Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, I could start by setting the scene. I'm sure all members of the House would agree that everybody needs the security and stability of a decent, affordable home, and nowhere is that need greater than in our capital city, which both the Honourable Lady and I have the privilege of representing in this House. As a government, we've gone some way to try to address this. 2014-15, Mr. Speaker, was a record year for London house building. 27,000 homes were delivered, including over 18,000 affordable homes, the most since we started collecting that data in 1991. But we need to do a lot more. That is why the government is doubling the housing budget to more than £20 billion over the next 5 years to support the largest house building programme of any government since the 1970s. We're also building a strong working relationship with the Mayor's team to deliver our shared goals to build more homes and help more people own their own home. Indeed, I'm due to speak to the Mayor about that tomorrow. As the Honourable Lady acknowledged, the housing association sector has a strong record on house building. It's delivered nearly 300,000 affordable homes since April 2010. That equates to all new housing in England each year. And to help the sector continue to build more homes, Government has already committed £8 billion to deliver a range of affordable housing starts by 2020. Very clear that we will prioritise housing in London. In April this year, we published the prospectus for the Shared Ownership and Affordable Homes programme. The bidding round closed in September, and the Homes and Community Agency is currently assessing bids, and we expect to announce successful bidders in December. This programme will get more homes built and help some take the first step on the housing ladder. But of course, building new homes is only part of the picture. One of the key roles of housing associations is to manage their existing stock. And I would like to turn to the role of the regulator, which the Honourable Lady touched on very strongly during her speech. It has a strong regulatory framework to make sure housing associations are well managed, Mr Speaker, provide good quality homes and serve the needs of their tenants and communities. The Honourable Lady may be aware that the government is committed to deregulating the sector, and she touched on that and asked us to rethink that. There are two reasons why we're doing that. The first, which she probably won't have a great deal of sympathy with, is part of the deal with housing associations to deliver the voluntary right to buy. But the second reason, which I would hope she and I'm sure the Shadow Minister have a lot of sympathy with, is to allow the Office for National Statistics to return the sector to the private sector where it belongs. It is very important, if we want to deliver more housing through the housing association sector, that we end this decision to treat housing associations as if they are part of the public sector. To help achieve these aims, a package of measures was included in the Housing and Planning Act 2016, to which the Honourable Lady referred. They include the removal of the regulator's disposals consents regime, which means housing associations will no longer need the regulator's permission to sell their own stock or to charge it for security. And the regulator's constitutional consents regime is also to be abolished, and that will remove the need for housing associations to seek permission before they make organisational changes. What will not change is the strong regulatory framework. The regulator's monitoring powers will remain unchanged, and it will continue to take action where necessary. And it will also continue with its vital role, Mr Speaker, in encouraging and challenging the sector to improve efficiency and asset management. Its role is to help maintain a viable, well-governed sector, attractive to commercial lenders. If I'll just finish this point and we'll happily give way. Attractive to commercial lenders to continue to invest at preferential rates so that we get the new housing we need, but also, crucially, doing a good job for the tenants those housing associations serve.
I'm really concerned by the Minister's response, because I cannot understand how this helps deal with the concerns of my constituents and the way in which they're being treated. It's yet again more complacency, and it doesn't address the effects on people, on the public. And back to his point on privatising housing associations, the fact is they have been subsidised in the billions. So putting it back into deregulation has to go with responsibility to the public and accountability to the public because of the public investment that has gone in. Can he? Surely he can understand that.
Minister.
I absolutely understand and share the Honourable Lady's desire to ensure that in return for the very significant public investment the government is putting into the housing association sector, we not only get the new homes that we so desperately need, I don't think there's any difference between us on that, but also the housing associations do a good job for their existing tenants. And she'll allow me to make a little bit of progress. I hope I can provide her with some reassurance. Because the new freedoms that come with the deregulation measures will undoubtedly bring new challenges. It may alter the way that the sector approaches decision-making and business planning, but the sector has a long history of meeting housing need. The majority of housing associations are still charitable, and they are non-profit-making organisations. And whilst they are running very large businesses, some of them, in terms of the money involved, I think she was quite right to allude to that key social value that they provide in what they do, and that they must not lose sight of that. And I am confident that they will continue to be responsible social landlords, acting in the best interest both of their current tenants and those in housing need. Indeed, they must have a process in place, Mr Speaker, for tenants to have a say in how the organisation is run and to deal with complaints when tenants think their service doesn't come up to scratch. The Housing Ombudsman has the main role dealing with complaints where tenants feel the matters can't be resolved directly with their housing association, but the regulator considers all the information it receives to determine whether there has been a breach of its standards and serious harm to tenants, as clearly happened in the case that the Honourable Lady has brought before the House tonight, and acts where it judges that to be the case. Now, I hope the Honourable Lady will understand that as the regulator is independent, and that independence is very important, I can't directly intervene in individual cases. But I am confident that it takes all complaints seriously and investigates where necessary. I'd like to apologise to her that she hasn't received a reply yet to the letter that she wrote me in August, and I'd like to say to her very clearly on the record now that going forward, if she has any concerns about this, she should speak to me in person. I want to be kept informed of exactly what the situation is and whether the progress that we both want to see is making. We heard a lot in her speech about concerns about Circle 33 and Old Ford, two of the housing associations within the Circle group this evening. As the Honourable Lady may know, the regulator found that Circle's long-standing poor emergency repairs service for two of its associations, Circle 33 and Old Ford, put its tenants at risk of serious harm. That is a very serious matter, Mr Speaker. The regulator took decisive action in April last year. It downgraded Circle as it judged they fell far short of the required standard and ordered it to make urgent improvements. That is not a decision it took lightly. I'm pleased to say that Circle did take action to improve its performance. The Honourable Lady referred to Kier, the contractors, and my understanding is that that contract was terminated. The regulator has now upgraded Circle's rating to compliance standard, so-called V2, but that is not good enough. It's still not reached the level that we all would have a right to expect, and I will be monitoring that situation very carefully. The Honourable Lady also referred in her speech to the proposed mergers, and perhaps I may say a few words about that. As part of Circle's drive to improve its governance arrangements, it plans to merge its 9 separate housing associations, including Old Ford, into one. It believes this will create a more efficient organisation. Now, housing associations need to take the views of their tenants into account before making such organisational changes. Indeed, it's one of the requirements of the regulator that they must do so, along with consulting their local authority, Tower Hamlets in this case, and lenders. So Old Ford will need to make their case for this change as part of that consultation. Until the deregulation measures come into force, the regulator's permission to make this change, and the regulator's criteria for taking a decision include whether the change will lead to simple, clear governance structures and whether it will deliver improved and future tenants. And I understand that the regulator has yet to receive an application from Old Ford in this regard. Again, as befits the regulator's independence, government, and that obviously includes me, don't have a role in such decisions. It'll be up to the regulator and the regulator alone to carefully consider the application and make its decision. My honourable friend, the Honourable Lady also referred to the merger of the whole Circle group with another housing association, Affinity Sutton. This merger would create a new organisation to be called the Clarion Group, which would manage about 1,000 homes. It would make it the largest housing association in the country. They've said that this will help deliver better services to tenants and help them build more homes. Now, in this case, I'm told they have already consulted tenants, and I'm told, and the Honourable Lady clearly believes otherwise, they didn't receive many responses to that consultation. So the regulator has given conditional approval to that merger, but it hasn't yet taken a decision in relation to the 9 associations within the Circle group. I hope this new organisation will continue to house and protect its tenants in a transparent and accountable manner. The regulator's job is to ensure that it does. The Honourable Lady clearly has real concerns about that. I would say to her that Affinity Sutton's performance in relation to the repairs service is significantly better than Circle Group's. So clearly there are signs there that they are merging with an organisation that is doing a much better job for its tenants, and the hope must be that that improved service will be brought to bear for Circle's tenants. But it's clear from her speech that she doesn't share the confidence that the regulator has in that, and I'm very happy to discuss with her after the debate in detail the reasons for her concern. Mr Speaker, I acknowledge that there has been a lot of change in the social housing sector in recent years. It's becoming increasingly complex, and it continues to diversify into a range of new commercial ventures and relationships. The Honourable Lady referred in her speech to the internal review the government has conducted of the homes and community. We will be publishing the results of that review very shortly, but I want to reassure her that foremost in my mind in considering that review is making sure that when we look at the functions that the HCA has at the moment, and parts of it increasingly resemble a bank that is making commercial lending decisions, that we have a very strong and clear and robust role for the regulator to look after the interests of tenants. It's also very important that housing associations' boards, skills and governance structures continue to evolve to match this increasing complexity. Overall, I believe that the sector is rising to this challenge, Mr. Speaker, indicating ambitious plans for building the homes that this country desperately needs. It continues to invest in increasing supply to help the government achieve our commitments. As independent organisations, it is up to housing associations themselves to explore options thoroughly and openly and make well-informed decisions about what is best given their particular circumstances. Mergers will not be the answer in every case, but it should be of concern to all of us if associations do not explore options that would help them make better use of the resources they have and provide an improved service to their tenants. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Lady for securing this debate on a very important issue. I have personally, as Housing Minister, received correspondence from some of her constituents who are very concerned about the service that she's been receiving. I want to apologise again that she didn't get a reply from me in a timely fashion, and I mean what I say. If she has ongoing concerns, she should feel very free to come and talk to me at any point in this House or make an appointment to come and see me at the department, because I would very much want to work with her to ensure that her constituents get the service that they have every right to expect from their landlord.
Order. The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as I have that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order.